My name is Carla. I have been married to my husband, Howard, for almost 3 years now. Recently, I have started to feel a bit tired of our relationship. My mom is coming over this weekend. So, you stay at home. I'm going out. Really? You're telling me to stay at home, but what about you, Howard? Where are you going? It doesn't matter where I go. Usually, we do not interfere with each other's way of spending our days off. However, things change when my mother-in-law's visit approaches. She doesn't seem to like me much and always asks, "No kids yet?" Therefore, I want to minimize my contact with her, but Howard doesn't understand my concerns. I told Howard that I wanted to avoid being alone with his mother, but he didn't take it seriously. My mom would never say anything unpleasant. I have never heard her do so. Howard argues against my words and ignores my feelings. I'm confused by this situation. It's painful that Howard doesn't believe what I say. Even if my mother-in-law is kind in front of Howard, I wish he would believe me a little when I say, "She hurts me when you're not looking." It's a situation where I can't help but feel that our marriage is only in name. On the day, Howard didn't seem to want to listen to me and left the house without canceling his plans. Shortly after, my mother-in-law arrived. When the doorbell rang, I honestly hesitated to open the door. However, worried about what would be said later, I finally opened it. As soon as my mother-in-law entered, she bombarded me with questions. Can I expect to hear news of a grandchild soon? What about it? How are things at night recently? Are you doing well? I cringe at these questions that intrude into personal privacy. Being asked about children almost every week is a source of stress. But my mother-in-law doesn't realize it. Regardless of my position or feelings, she keeps asking questions and blaming me. What on earth are you doing? You're utterly unreliable. You must think properly about children. If I leave it to you, I might never see my grandchild. Really, what a useless daughter-in-law. Why do I have to be spoken to like this? It seems my mother-in-law hasn't even considered the possibility that the real reason for not having children might be with Howard. And Howard doesn't tell the truth and just turns a blind eye. In such a situation, I'm beginning to lose the desire to have children with Howard. He already leaves dealing with his mother to me and goes out to have fun. If a baby were born in the future, he would probably ignore it. Even if I ask for help with childcare, he'll likely say, "I have things to do," and leave all the baby care to me. I can easily imagine this scenario and have lost confidence in raising a child with Howard. So, no matter how much my mother-in-law says, "Let me hold my grandchild," it's impossible because I don't want children myself. Yet, she doesn't stop preaching. It's your body's fault that you can't have children. And then, criticizing my attitude. Maybe Howard doesn't want to stay at home because you're not trying hard enough. After my mother-in-law left, I immediately contacted my father-in-law. I told him about how she was saying whatever she wanted to me, gave irrelevant lectures, and that Howard was gone somewhere. He apologized, sounding sorry. My father-in-law is a close friend of my father, and because of that connection, I was able to meet Howard. Howard and I were married in a way similar to an arranged marriage. My father-in-law liked my father and me and was always on our side, which probably didn't sit well with my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law once had an affair, and it was discovered by my father-in-law. They stayed together for the sake of the children, but I heard that his trust in her was gone. Since then, Howard became an adult, but my mother-in-law, lacking the confidence to live on her own, was reluctantly kept in the house by my father-in-law. Feeling out of place, my mother-in-law treated me coldly and vented her stress on me, which left me bewildered. What should I do? My father-in-law apologized to me, saying, "I'll talk to her, tell her to be careful." But my mother-in-law had never accepted those words. I don't expect her to change now, considering her personality. Just when I felt a bit constrained in my life, a shocking and sad event struck me. My father passed away suddenly, and just a month later, my father-in-law also died. I couldn't bear the grief of losing them both so quickly. Despite my situation, Howard and my mother-in-law continued to pressure me. It all started with what my mother-in-law said at my father's funeral. I heard a rumor that Carla's father had a huge debt. I was hearing this for the first time. My father had never mentioned any debt to me. What's more, my mother-in-law had already told Howard about this. Carla, did you know this and were waiting for Howard to inherit his parents' wealth? At that moment, Howard looked at me. His look wasn't one of a loving husband. It was filled with hostility, and I regretted marrying him. My father-in-law was quietly angry when he heard my mother-in-law's remark. What are you saying? Be mindful of your words. Thanks to my father-in-law's words, I managed to contain my anger at the time. If he hadn't spoken up, I might have yelled at Howard and my mother-in-law right then and there. However, my father-in-law, who had been my protector, passed away just a month after my father's death. I lost both of them, who had been on my side, at the same time. Howard and my mother-in-law seemed even more unrestrained in their behavior. One day, Howard was still home when my mother-in-law came over early in the morning. It was unusual for Howard not to be away when she visited. It seemed they had some secret plan. Carla, come over here. I moved closer to Howard and my mother-in-law. They had taken over the living room sofa, so I stood. Sit on the floor. I was ordered to sit on the floor, and then Howard, with a stern face, started to speak. Your father left a debt when he died, didn't he? It seems so. In fact, after my father's death, a lawyer had come to discuss his estate. It was then revealed that my father had left a debt of $2 million. But how did Howard know this? I have no intention of covering the debt. Why did you keep quiet? Are you afraid of being abandoned by me? Did you plan to use my money to pay off the debt? Of course not. Indeed, I hadn't mentioned the debt, but it wasn't for any ulterior motive. My father had $2 million in debt, but I wouldn't need to pay it if I renounced the inheritance. Just as I was about to explain this, Howard and my mother-in-law presented me with divorce papers. What a disappointment. A money-eating bug. You have your father's DNA, who made debts. I can't be with a woman like that. Let's get divorced. I wanted to explain that I didn't need to pay the debt, but I hesitated. Even if I explained, life in this house was full of stress. Now that both my father and father-in-law were gone, it seemed wise to get divorced while Howard wanted it, rather than staying in a house where I was surrounded only by enemies. Let's get divorced. Prompted, I signed the divorce papers. My mother-in-law and Howard said, let's have a lavish dinner, and left happily with the divorce papers. While they were away, I started packing my belongings. With the help of a friend, I sorted out my things and left the house. As I was leaving, I heard from behind. Good riddance. It feels refreshing. Finally, a relief. Good for us. I ignored their happy voices and left the house without looking back. Afterward, I reported my divorce to the company and started a new life at a new workplace. Being single, I was transferred to a subsidiary in a distant land. It was a subsidiary, but I was assigned an important position and my salary increased. Then, Howard and my mother-in-law started contacting me one after the other. What's going on? Give me back my money right now. What? I honestly didn't understand the situation at all. Suddenly he contacted me, and on top of that, he brought up money, which left me in a panic. At first, I didn't understand what he was talking about. After calming down, I finally grasped what he was saying. It was about the inheritance. A few days ago, I was told to go to Howard and my mother-in-law's place for the reading of my father-in-law's will. Why am I involved in this? I didn't understand why I was called to this meeting and asked Howard. He grudgingly replied that the lawyer had told him to call me. Initially, Howard seemed displeased, thinking that his father's inheritance might go to his ex-wife. But the reality was entirely different. All of your father's $8 million inheritance goes to the former wife. No way. The lawyer's statement was a shocking turn of events. Both Howard and my mother-in-law were too shocked to say anything. The meeting with the lawyer didn't proceed, and I eventually left. At that time, Howard couldn't accept the reality and was frozen. But a few days later, he seemed to understand that his father's inheritance had become mine and contacted me. However, his approach was like that of a kindergarten child. Give back the money. What money are you talking about? I don't owe you any money. You stole my inheritance. Was that inheritance yours? It was supposed to be mine. Howard seemed to believe that as a son, he was entitled to monopolize the inheritance. Due to the affair, his father had said he wouldn't leave the inheritance to his mother. So, maybe his mother also expected the inheritance to go to Howard. However, in reality, the inheritance was willed to me. Do something. I thought I had an inheritance and paid off the house mortgage in full. Now I'm out of money. It seemed Howard faced a big problem due to his unplanned actions. I couldn't help but laugh. It's rude to laugh at your husband. We're not married anymore, are we? We're divorced and living separate lives. Perhaps because I hit the nail on the head, Howard fell silent on the phone. Being scolded over the phone didn't scare me anymore, as I had no relationship with him now. So, I decided to bring up something I hadn't been able to say before. Also, isn't there still a payment due? Aren't you going to pay it yet? Payment? What are you talking about? Don't you remember? The nightclub expenses I covered for you. You still haven't paid me back, have you? Howard seemed to have completely forgotten about it. I reminded him of the time he overspent on his favorite girl at a nightclub. He was invited to buy his boss, accumulating a debt of $10,000. I couldn't help but laugh at the irony that he, who had ridiculed my father's debt, was in a similar situation. Eventually, he thanked me for lending him the money and promised to pay it back after our divorce. But he never kept that promise. After my life stabilized post-divorce, I planned to consult a lawyer to recover the money. But that plan was temporarily shelved due to the inheritance from my father-in-law. If you're going to demand so much money from me, I can't just overlook the debt. Howard seemed baffled by being confronted. No. Please make the payment. $10,000. You're getting too cocky, aren't you? I can't believe you're inheriting $8 million just because your father and my father were close. Howard was trying to escape the issue of debt again. Changing the topic wouldn't resolve the money problem. So I decided to speak calmly and firmly. I didn't just receive the $8 million. When your father's company was in crisis, my father supported it. That's when my father's $2 million debt was incurred. Although my father-in-law's company appeared to be profitable, it faced a difficult situation at one point. My father helped the company by incurring debt. He didn't tell my father-in-law and tried to pay it off silently. But he died leaving the $2 million debt. My father-in-law was aware of the reason for the debt. My father-in-law told me that he wanted to leave all his property and cash, acquired thanks to the company's survival, to me. I tried to refuse, but he said, if you don't want it, you can donate it. Just don't give it to Howard and his mother. That was how I learned a shocking truth. By the way, do you think you originally had the right to receive it? What do you mean? My father died leaving an inheritance of $8 million. But you're not blood related to your father. What? How do you know that? Apparently, after discovering my mother-in-law's affair, My father-in-law secretly conducted a DNA test to confirm the paternity with Howard. It turned out that Howard and my father-in-law were not blood-related. Since the biological father of Howard, my mother-in-law's affair partner, couldn't afford to raise a child, my father-in-law decided to take Howard in. Moreover, my father-in-law recently discovered something shocking. Howard and my mother-in-law were secretly dining out regularly with the affair partner, behind my father-in-law's back. Listening to their conversations revealed that Howard and his mother had been treating my father-in-law like a wallet for a long time. Upon learning this shocking fact, my father-in-law decided not to leave the inheritance to them. When I explained this, Howard responded with a mix of surprise and embarrassment. So my father knew about that. He finally seemed to understand why he wasn't receiving the inheritance. With that realization, I felt confident in what I had to say. Don't forget about the $10,000. I'll hire a lawyer if necessary to recover it. Hey, Carla. Can't we start over? It seemed he hoped that even if he couldn't directly receive the inheritance from his father, reconciling with me would give him access to the $8 million. However, I no longer loved Howard and had no intention of enduring my mother-in-law's cold words again. I have no intention of starting over. And with that, I hung up the phone. Howard later went to my workplace. But since I had already informed the company about him, they told him there's no employee by that name here. Moreover, I was at a distant subsidiary, so it's unlikely we'll meet again. Howard and his mother thought I had quit my job because I received $8 million. Later, after hiring a lawyer, the $10,000 was promptly paid. Presumably, he must have borrowed money, as he supposedly had no savings due to the loan repayment. When my father died leaving debts, Howard abandoned me. Now it seems he's in debt and on the receiving end of abandonment. If he had someone who understood him like my father, maybe he could have been helped, but with his character, that seems unlikely. After repaying the debt, he's living with his noisy mother, working from morning till night to pay off the debt. I'm in a faraway place, planning to use the $8 million inheritance when necessary, and currently living a relaxed life.